The key to the deception. A tale of ambition, betrayal, and freedom in the heart of Manhattan. Stop scrolling right now, because what you are about to hear will completely shatter your expectations of love and power. This isn't just a story about a mistress and a wife. It's a high-stakes chess game where the ultimate prize is not a man, but an empire. Before we dive into the venomous glamour, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us unlock more shocking stories like this one. The crown of bronze. The key in her hand felt like a promise, cold, heavy, and intricately detailed. A piece of sculpted bronze that whispered of a future she had fought for. For Serafina Vance, it wasn't just a key. It was a coronation. The key to the ultra-luxury penthouse high above Central Park South. The key to a life wrapped in cashmere and diamonds. The key to the heart of Damien Cross. As she stepped into the private elevator, the silent ascent felt like a rise to her throne. She smoothed her silk-sheath dress, the city lights painting fleeting constellations on her sharp, focused face. Tonight, she wasn't the other woman. She was the only woman. But some doors are not meant to open, and some thrones are already occupied. What she was about to find behind that penthouse door wasn't the future she'd been promised, but a devastating truth delivered by the one person she never expected to see. The Emerald Trap. The soft electric hum of the taxi was a sharp contrast to the frantic, triumphant symphony playing in Serafina's chest. Every beat was a confirmation. You made it. You won. Outside, the rain-slicked streets of the Upper East Side reflected the city's indifferent glamour. But inside the car, Serafina Vance was the center of her own universe. She checked her reflection in the dark phone screen. Her blonde hair, styled in a severe, elegant bob, framed a face that had been her greatest asset. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, painted a defiant crimson, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. Eyes that had first captivated Damien Cross at a crowded Soho gallery 6 months ago. Her dress was a new acquisition, a deep emerald silk that clung to her figure like a second skin, a gift from Damien. A dress for a queen, he had whispered into her ear last night, his voice a low, intoxicating murmur that still sent chills through her. The dress arrived via special messenger this afternoon, nestled in a box, so grand it was an event itself. Inside the tissue paper was the key. It wasn't a copy. It was heavy, ornate, with the Cross family crest, a stylized C intertwined with a falcon, engraved on its head. My private entrance, the note read, scrawled in Damien's impatient, powerful hand. The key to your new home. Meet me there at 9 sharp. The wife is out of town visiting her sister in Boston. We have the weekend. We have forever. The wife, Eleanor. Serafina had never met her, but she'd built a vivid image of the woman from Damien's careless descriptions and a few stolen glimpses in the society pages. A ghost at the feast of their romance. According to Damien, Eleanor was a relic of a life he no longer wanted. A woman content with charity luncheons and garden parties. A perfectly suitable partner for the public eye, but devoid of the passion and ambition he craved. She doesn't understand me, Serafina, he'd said, his hand tracing the curve of her jaw. Not like you do. Serafina believed him. She had to. She had gambled her entire future on that belief. At 27, she was tired of being a highly educated but underpaid gallery assistant, surrounded by art she could never afford, and people who saw her as little more than decorative staff. Damien wasn't just a lover. He was an escape. He was 52, the CEO of Cross Global Properties, an industry titan with a predatory smile and a portfolio that could swallow small countries. He saw her, he said. He saw her fire, her intelligence. He was leaving Eleanor. The divorce was already in motion. His lawyers were just finalizing the details to protect the family name. The penthouse was the first step. It was going to be their sanctuary, the gilded cage where he would keep his beautiful, brilliant bird until he was free to fly her publicly as Mrs. Cross. The car pulled up to the curb outside a limestone colossus on Fifth Avenue, a building that didn't just overlook Central Park. It commanded it. The doorman, a stoic man named Milo, whose face was as impassive as the gargoyles adorning the building's facade, gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Damien had arranged everything. "Straight ahead, Ms. Vance," Milo said, his voice a husky monotone, as he held open the heavy glass door. She didn't need to ask. He had been informed. The key's final turn. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and gold leaf. Silence reigned, save for the distant hum of the city and the soft click of Serafina's heels on the polished floor. She walked toward the private lift at the far end, the one Damien had described. It required a special code he'd sent via an ephemeral message, followed by the bronze key. As she ascended, the floors passed with a gentle digital chime. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The culmination of 6 months of clandestine meetings in 5-star hotel suites, promises whispered over $1,000 bottles of wine, and a carefully orchestrated campaign to make herself indispensable to a man who had everything. She had bested a woman with 25 years of history, a shared past, and 2 grown children. She had done it with her beauty, yes, but also with her wit and her unshakable belief that she deserved it. The private lift sighed to a halt. The doors opened, not to a hallway, but directly to a private vestibule. Before her was a single, imposing door of dark mahogany. She took a deep breath, the air tasting of victory. She slid the heavy bronze key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying, well-oiled clunk. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing the threshold of her new life. The first thing that hit her was the view, a glass wall showcasing the glittering tapestry of Manhattan by night. The second was the scent. It wasn't Damien's familiar Tom Ford cologne. It was something else, a subtle, elegant fragrance, white gardenias, and something sharp like citrus. And the third thing she saw, standing by the window with her back to the city, was her, the wife. Eleanor Cross. Interactive question. Imagine you are Serafina. You have the key and the emerald dress, believing you've won. What is the first thing that flashes through your mind when you see Eleanor standing there? Tell us in the comments below. Black Pawn. The master architect. For a long, suspended moment, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Serafina froze in the doorway, the bronze key still clutched in her hand, her mind struggling to reconcile the image before her with the narrative she had so carefully constructed. This was not the woman she had envisioned. The Eleanor of her mind was a faded society matron, draped in pearls and beige cashmere, her face a mask of pleasant but weary indifference. The woman before her was the antithesis. Eleanor Cross was tall and statuesque, dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored black jumpsuit that denoted a quiet, lethal elegance. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe chignon, emphasizing the strong lines of her jaw and high cheekbones. She held a crystal glass of what looked like whiskey, the ice clinking softly as she turned. Not with a start, but with a slow, deliberate grace, as if she'd been expecting the sound of the door all along. Her eyes, a deep, intelligent brown, met Serafina's. There was no surprise in them, no anger, just a quiet, unnerving assessment that made Serafina suddenly feel cheap and exposed in her queen's dress. "Serafina Vance," Eleanor said. Her voice was not the high-pitched shriek of an aggrieved spouse. It was low, measured, and carried an authority that filled the spacious room. "You are punctual." Damien always appreciated punctuality. Serafina's mouth went dry. Her carefully rehearsed lines, the blend of defiance and coquettish charm she had prepared for their inevitable first encounter, evaporated. What are you doing here?" she stammered, the words clumsy and inadequate. "Damien said you were in Boston." A small, humorless smile touched Eleanor's lips. "He said that, did he? Damien says many things. It is one of his most predictable and, frankly, most tiresome qualities." She took a slow sip of her drink, her eyes never leaving Serafina's face. "I canceled my trip. My sister understands. Family emergencies take precedence." Serafina's audacity began to return, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. This was a confrontation, then. Fine. She could handle a confrontation. She had won the man. The wife was just a final hurdle to be overcome. She lifted her chin, letting the door click shut behind her. "I think you're the one who needs to leave," Serafina said, her voice trembling only slightly. "Damien and I need to talk. He's ending things with you. He's probably on his way up right now to tell you." Eleanor's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I don't doubt he's en route. He thinks he's coming here for a weekend of sordid, predictable passion with his latest project." She gestured around the opulent penthouse. "He probably told you this was going to be your new home, our love nest." The word "our" hung in the air, a poisoned arrow. "It is," Serafina insisted, clutching the key in her hand, holding it like a talisman. "He gave me the key." Eleanor's gaze dropped to the bronze key. She set her glass down on a marble-topped table with a soft click. "Yes, that key. The guest key. A beautiful piece of theater, isn't it? Solid bronze, family crest, makes a girl feel special." She stepped forward, and from a small, concealed pocket in her jumpsuit, she pulled out a key of her own. It was different. A simple, sleek, brushed platinum card. She held it up, letting it catch the light. "This," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is the master key. It doesn't just open the door, it controls the entire system. The lights, the security, the private lift. It can grant or deny access to every other key, including the charming little trinket you have in your hand. I knew the exact moment you entered the building." "Serafina, I authorized your lift ride. I unlocked the door for you from my phone 30 seconds before you even touched the lock. You didn't walk into your new home. You walked into mine, and you walked in because I permitted it." The blood drained from Serafina's face. The silk dress suddenly felt like a costume for a play in which she had catastrophically misunderstood her role. The penthouse, which moments ago had felt like a symbol of her triumph, now felt like a cage. The magnificent city view was not a backdrop for her new life. It was a silent audience to her humiliation. Call to action. If you are shocked by Eleanor's move, let us know. Smash the notification bell so you don't miss the next twist. "Why?" Serafina whispered, the fight fading from her. "Why do this? To gloat? To kick me out yourself?" "Gloating?" Eleanor let out a short, dry laugh. "Oh dear, this is much bigger than gloating. Gloating is for amateurs. This is about business." She retrieved her drink and motioned toward a pair of expansive white sofas. "Please sit. We have much to discuss, and you'll want to be comfortable. Damien won't be here for another 45 minutes, and trust me, you and I need to be in agreement before he arrives." Serafina sank onto the plush white sofa, her body heavy and disconnected. The soft leather, which should have felt like the height of luxury, now felt entirely engulfing. Across from her, Eleanor sat in a matching armchair, the picture of serene, formidable control. For the first time, Serafina noticed the details of the room, not as an aspirational set piece, but as extensions of the woman commanding it. The art on the walls wasn't typical hotel lobby fare. It was a curated collection of powerful, defiant pieces. A fierce abstract by Joan Mitchell, a melancholic sculpture by Louise Bourgeois. This was not Damien's space. It was Eleanor's. "You'll be wondering how I knew," Eleanor began, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. It wasn't a tearful phone call from a friend, a suspicious credit card bill, a lipstick stain on a collar. That's what he would expect. It's what you would expect. Damien is a creature of clichés. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp and focused. "But I am not. I didn't hear about you, Serafina. I uncovered you. There is a difference." Serafina remained silent, her mind a swirl of confusion and dread. "Damien and I," Eleanor continued, "are partners in more than just marriage. The cross-global brand is built on an image, but the cross-family fortune is managed by the Beaumont Trust, my family's trust. I oversee the accounts, the investments, the acquisitions. Damien is the face, the deal maker. I am the architect. I see my every wire transfer, every invoice, every expense report." She paused, letting that sink in. "6 months ago, I noticed a discrepancy, a minor one, easily passed over. An acquisition for our private art collection, a sculpture from a small but promising artist, purchased from the Bennett Gallery downtown. The price was inflated. Not by much, just enough to be suspicious. 15% above its market value. I made a discreet inquiry. The gallery confirmed the sale price, but the artist's representative confirmed the much lower artist's commission. The gallery had pocketed the difference, not unheard of, but the documentation was funneled through one of Damien's personal holding companies, not through the official foundation channels. It was sloppy. A cold knot formed in Serafina's stomach. The Bennett Gallery. Her gallery. She remembered the sale, a brash, wealthy new client. He had walked in. He barely glanced at the art and bought the most expensive piece in the room. His name was Damien Cross. He had asked for her by name. "That sloppy transaction was my first hint," Eleanor said. "So I started pulling the thread. I tasked my forensic accountant, a charming man named Julian, who finds the beauty in spreadsheets, to investigate all of Damien's discretionary accounts, and what he found was a pattern." Eleanor's voice was devoid of emotion, like she was delivering a quarterly report. Inflated invoices, consulting fees paid to newly formed LLCs with no operating history, charitable donations that were funneled back to shell companies. Damien wasn't just cheating on me, Serafina. He has been systematically embezzling our joint assets from my family's trust. He's been using our money to fund his hobbies. She gestured vaguely toward Serafina. The implication was clear. Serafina was not a great love. She was a hobby. A costly, embezzled hobby. The trips to Paris? International real estate scouting for developers. The Cartier bracelet he gave you? Logged as a corporate giveaway. This very dress. Eleanor's eyes scanned the emerald silk with cold indifference. Paid for out of an account designated for political lobbying and entertainment. He's been building a separate life, a separate nest with my family's money. He thinks I'm too busy organizing the annual hospital gala to notice the millions of dollars he's been siphoning off for years. Serafina felt a wave of nausea. Every gift, every grand romantic gesture was being recontextualized as a criminal transaction. The narrative of their grand love story was dissolving into a sordid tale of white-collar crime. So when I learned he put a down payment on a yacht and named it the Serafina, it wasn't hard to find you, Eleanor concluded. A quick social media search, a background check. Serafina Vance, ambitious, beautiful, working at the same gallery where the embezzlement began. It was all very neat, very tidy, and very, very foolish of him. Serafina finally found her voice, though it was a mere whisper. So you knew? For how long? I have a full file on you and Damien, going back 4 months, Eleanor stated dryly. I know about the suite you favor at the Plaza Hotel. I know you prefer lilies to roses. I know he promised he would leave me, that the divorce was imminent. He uses that line every time. The last one was a yoga instructor named Chloe. Before that, an intern from his Miami office. You are merely the most expensive. The word hit Serafina with the force of a physical blow. Every time. The latest. She wasn't the exception. She was the rule. She was just the latest in a series of interchangeable women. The latest project. The humiliation was so profound, it was suffocating. She had believed herself a queen, a conqueror. In reality, she was just an entry on a spreadsheet. A pawn in a game she hadn't even known she was playing. Eleanor watched the horror dawn on Serafina's face. No pity visible. You see, this was never about saving my marriage. My marriage has been a business arrangement for a decade. This is about protecting my legacy, my children's inheritance, and my future. Damien made a fatal mistake. He mistook my silence for ignorance. And now, she leaned back, a predator at ease. It is time to liquidate the asset. Interactive question. Eleanor has just revealed she's been tracking Damien and his embezzlement for months. Do you think her calculated, non-emotional approach is a sign of strength or a terrifying level of coldness? Let us know your thoughts below. The unholy alliance. The silence in the penthouse stretched, thick and heavy. The only sound was the distant wail of a siren rising from the streets below. Serafina felt as though she was trapped under glass. Every illusion she had harbored about her life with Damien was being systematically shattered by the quiet, ruthless woman sitting across from her. And Chloe? Serafina managed finally. The name stuck in her throat. Chloe received a very generous severance package and an NDA a week before Damien met you, Eleanor said, her tone casual, as if discussing a minor staff change. He told her he needed to focus on his family. He probably told you he had been miserable for years, and that you were the first person to make him feel alive. Am I close? The words were almost a direct quote of what Damien had told her on their third date, his hand covering hers across a candlelit table. The intimacy of that moment now felt grotesque, a recycled performance for an audience of one. Serafina's mind raced, replaying the last 6 months in a hideous new light. The sudden business trips where he was unreachable for hours. The times he had casually asked her opinion on offshore banking or art as an investment. He wasn't confiding in her. He was using her, testing out his lies, perhaps even subconsciously implicating her in his schemes, assuming she was too dazzled by the glamour to comprehend the substance. She remembered one night, a month ago. They were in his study at his country home in the Hamptons, a place she was only allowed to visit when Eleanor was supposedly away. He was on the phone, arguing with someone about logistics and transparency. When he hung up, he was agitated. He had poured himself a large brandy and turned to her. "It's my wife's trustees," he had muttered. "Bean counters. They question every little thing. They don't understand that to make money, you have to spend it. To build an empire, you can't be afraid to bend the rules." He had framed it as a struggle between his visionary genius and their petty bureaucracy. He had made her feel like his sole confidant, the only one who truly understood the pressures he was under. Now, Serafina understood. He wasn't confiding in his visionary partner. He was complaining to his embezzled asset about the very people who were closing in on him. "He told me this penthouse was a new corporate acquisition for the company," Serafina said, her voice hollow, as she tried to salvage some shred of the fantasy. "A corporate apartment he was going to take over for us." Eleanor let out a genuine, sharp peal of laughter this time. "My dear, I bought this penthouse with my own inheritance a decade ago before Damien's company even went public. It is in my name and my name alone. He has no legal claim to it. He brought you here, to my home, because the arrogance of men like Damien knows no bounds. He genuinely believes he is the sun, and that we are all just planets revolving around him. It never occurs to him that one of the planets might simply be a meteor, waiting for the right moment to strike. Eleanor rose and walked over to an elegant lacquered credenza. She pulled open a drawer and retrieved a thin leather portfolio, placing it on the coffee table between them. She opened it. Inside were documents, photographs, and spreadsheets. Evidence, Eleanor said simply. She slid a photograph across the table. It was of Damien, laughing on a yacht. His arm was around a dazzling redhead. The name on the boat's stern was clearly visible. The Serenity. This was taken 2 years ago. Serenity was Chloe's middle name, Eleanor explained coldly. He scuttled it for the insurance money 6 months later, just before his lawyers drafted the documentation for the Serafina. He's not just unfaithful, you see. He's unoriginal. She pushed another document forward. It was a bank statement from a Cayman Islands shell company. It showed a transfer of $250,000 to another account. The date of the transfer corresponded to the day after Serafina had mentioned she was looking to invest in a friend's tech startup. Damien had offered to manage it for her, a grand gesture of support for her ambitions. He had taken her money. Serafina stared at the paper. The numbers blurred through a sudden film of tears. It wasn't just the betrayal of the heart. It was the cold, calculated violation of her trust, her ambition, her very identity. He hadn't seen her as a partner. He had seen her as prey. He used me? Serafina whispered, the realization a cold stone in her gut. Everything. It was all a lie. Yes, Eleanor nodded, her voice softening for the first time. Not with pity, but with a kind of weary recognition. He used you. He used your ambition against you. He saw a young, smart, hungry woman and knew he could sell you a story you desperately wanted to believe. He does the same in his business. He finds the vulnerability and he exploits it. That's how he built his empire. Serafina looked up from the damning evidence, her own reflection staring back at her from the glossy surface of the table. The confident, triumphant woman who had walked in 45 minutes ago was gone. In her place was a fool, a beautifully dressed, desperately naive fool. The crimson of her lipstick now felt garish, the emerald of her dress like a mark. A new emotion began to bubble up through the humiliation and heartbreak. Rage. A cold, pure fury directed not at the woman across from her, but at the man who had orchestrated this entire charade. The man who, at this very moment, was on his way, expecting to find his adoring mistress, waiting to begin their forever. "What do you want from me?" Serafina asked, her voice hard, the tears receding. Eleanor closed the portfolio, a faint, calculating smile returning to her lips. "I told you this is a business. Damien is leveraged to the hilt. He is being investigated by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, for insider trading, though he doesn't know the investigation is as far along as it is. My testimony, coupled with my accountant's evidence, will be enough to ruin his public reputation and freeze most of our joint assets. But to ensure he goes to prison, to truly dismantle his power structure, and ensure he can never touch my family's money or my children's future again, I need an inside witness." Eleanor's dark eyes locked with Serafina's. "I need you." The offer hung in the air, audacious and terrifying. It shifted the entire dynamic of the room. This was no longer a confrontation between a wife and a mistress. It was a recruitment. Serafina looked at Eleanor, seeing her now in a completely different light. She wasn't just a scorned woman. She was a master strategist, moving her pieces on a board Serafina hadn't even seen. "You want me to do what?" Serafina asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. testify against him? Why would I do that? He'll destroy me. He will try, Eleanor corrected calmly. His lawyers will paint you as a gold digger, a bitter, spurned harlot. They will attempt to bury you in litigation and trash your name in every tabloid in the country. On your own, you wouldn't stand a chance. She leaned forward, her intensity palpable. But you won't be on your own. You will be under the protection of my legal team, the finest corporate and criminal defense lawyers in Manhattan. You will be granted full immunity in exchange for your testimony. The money he invested for you will be quietly returned from a private account of mine. The gifts, the apartment he paid for, the car, you keep them all. Consider it a severance package. Serafina was speechless. The sheer magnitude of Eleanor's plan was breathtaking. She had thought tonight was the climax of her own story, but she was merely a character in Eleanor's meticulously plotted drama. Why me? Serafina pressed, a desperate need to understand her role in this Machiavellian play. You have documents, accountants, you said so yourself. Documents show transactions. I need someone to provide the context, Eleanor explained, her voice precise and clinical. I need you to testify about the conversations you overheard, the late-night phone calls where he boasted about fooling the feds, the time he used your laptop to make a stock trade because he thought it was untraceable. He got sloppy with you, Serafina. He grew arrogant. He let you see behind the curtain because he fundamentally doesn't respect you enough to believe you could ever be a threat. Your testimony will be the human element, the narrative a jury can understand. You will be the nail in his coffin. The offer was a lifeline and a curse. On one hand, it was a path to escape the wreckage of her life with her dignity, and surprisingly, her finances intact. On the other, it meant allying herself with this formidable, intimidating woman and actively participating in the destruction of the man she had, until an hour ago, believed she loved. But did she love him? Or did she love the dream he sold her? The man in the documents, the one who named his yachts after his lovers and embezzled his own family's funds, was not the man she thought she knew. He was a stranger, a monster dressed in a bespoke suit. The love, she realized with nauseating clarity, had been for the facade, and the facade was now shattered. What if I say no? Serafina asked, testing the limits of her new reality. Eleanor's expression tightened slightly. If you say no, I proceed without you. The SEC will still come after him. When they do, all his associates will be scrutinized. And you, Ms. Vance, are a very prominent associate. That investment money he diverted for you? That's called money laundering. The gifts paid for with embezzled funds? That's receiving stolen property. Without my protection, you won't be a witness. You will be an accomplice. You are a smart woman, Serafina. Do the math. Your choice is between a new, comfortable, quiet life somewhere far from here, or a shared cell with a yoga instructor named Chloe. The threat was delivered without passion, a simple statement of fact that made it all the more terrifying. Serafina looked down at her hands, which were trembling. She had walked into that penthouse seeking power, and now she was utterly defenseless. Her only move was to choose a side, and there was only one side offering a future. She took a long, shaky breath, the scent of white gardenias and victory filling her lungs. What do I need to do? A slow, satisfied smile spread across Eleanor's face. For now, you do nothing. You sit here. You look beautiful. And when Damien walks through that door, you play the role he expects you to play. The adoring, loving mistress. You let him believe he's in control. You let him walk into the center of the web. Eleanor glanced at the delicate Patek Philippe watch on her wrist. He will be here in 5 minutes. He will be surprised to see me, of course. He will lie. He will try to manipulate us both, to turn us against each other. It is crucial that you don't show your hand. Let me do the talking. You just need to sit there and watch the show. Your only role tonight is to be the audience to his downfall." As if on cue, a soft chime resonated through the penthouse. The private elevator was ascending. "Showtime," Eleanor whispered, raising her whiskey glass and taking a final, steadying sip. She looked like a queen on her throne, waiting for the court jester to make his final, fatal mistake. Serafina's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drum roll announcing the start of the final act. The final act. The elevator doors whispered open, and Damien Cross strode into the penthouse. He was exactly as Serafina remembered, but somehow diminished in the harsh light of the truth. He was handsome, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her car. His silver hair perfectly groomed. He held a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon in one hand and a velvet jeweler's box in the other. His face was lit with a confident, predatory smile, the smile he always wore when he was about to close a deal or begin a seduction. His eyes immediately found Serafina on the sofa, and his smile widened. "There she is, my goddess in green," he began, his voice a low, intimate purr. He took 2 steps into the room before he froze. His gaze had flickered, finally landing on the figure in the armchair. Eleanor. The transformation was instant and astonishing. The confident smile evaporated, replaced by a flash of panic, then a mask of cold, calculated composure. The industry titan became a schoolboy, caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Eleanor," he said, his voice strained. "What a surprise. I thought you were in Boston." "Plans change," Eleanor retorted, her voice silken smooth. She did not rise. She merely gestured with her glass towards Serafina. "You have a guest, Damien. Don't be rude." Damien's eyes darted between the 2 women, his powerful brain whirring, trying to process the scene, to find an angle, a lie that would fit. Serafina could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. "Serafina, darling," he said, his voice regaining some of its practiced charm, though tight. "This is a misunderstanding. Eleanor, my love, Serafina is a business associate. We were finalizing the details of a new arts endowment for the foundation. I was just bringing a bottle to celebrate." He held up the champagne, as if it were proof of his innocence. The lie was so brazen, so insulting in its simplicity, that Serafina almost laughed. A business meeting? In a silk dress at 10 o'clock at night, with a key to his private penthouse? Eleanor, however, remained perfectly composed. An arts endowment? How wonderful. I run the foundation, Damien. Strange that I wasn't aware of a new endowment large enough to warrant a personal meeting in my home. She paused. And the jewelry box. Is that a corporate seal for the new foundation? Damien looked down at the velvet box in his hand, as if he had forgotten it was there. He hesitated for a moment. It's a gift, a corporate gift, for Ms. Vance's gallery, for her cooperation. How thoughtful, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with irony. Why don't you give it to her? Let's see this generous corporate gift. Cornered, Damien walked stiffly over to Serafina. He avoided her eyes, his jaw clenched. He held out the box. For the gallery, he mumbled under his breath. Serafina's hand trembled as she took it. She knew what it would be. A diamond necklace they had admired in a Fifth Avenue window last week. A piece he had promised would be a pre-wedding gift. She flipped open the lid. There, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was the necklace, sparkling under the penthouse lights, a beautiful, expensive lie. She closed the box with a sharp, final click. She looked at Damien. She really looked at him, and for the first time she felt nothing. No love, no desire. Just a vast, empty space where those feelings used to be. Enough with the theater, Damien, Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the tension. She stood up. All pretense of politeness was gone. The game is over. I don't know what you're talking about, he blustered, trying to regain the offensive. You're hysterical, Eleanor. I know about the shell companies registered in the Caymans, Eleanor interrupted, her voice like ice. I know about the inflated art invoices from the Bennett Gallery. I know about the consulting fees paid to a non-existent firm in Miami. I know you have been embezzling funds from my family's trust for the better part of 5 years. Damien paled. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking old and haggard. That is a ridiculous accusation. My forensic accountant, Julian, he doesn't think so. Nor does the SEC. They have been building a case against you for months, Damien. Insider trading, wire fraud, money laundering, it's quite a long list. You did this, he whispered, his eyes wide with horrified realization. You tipped them off. I protected my family's assets, she corrected him. You were a liability, a bad investment that needed to be fully written off. He sagged onto the edge of the sofa. The champagne bottle slipped from his hand and rolled unattended across the plush rug. You can't prove any of that. It's my word against yours. Not exactly, Eleanor said, her gaze sweeping to Serafina. We have a witness, someone you confided in, someone who saw you making illicit trades on her laptop, someone you got sloppy with, because you never imagined she could be anything more than a pretty distraction. Damien's head snapped toward Serafina, his eyes blazing with venomous betrayal. You talk to her? He snarled, the charming facade completely gone, revealing the ugly, desperate man underneath. After everything I've done for you, I gave you everything. Serafina finally found her voice. It was quiet, but it did not tremble. You gave me nothing, she said, looking him directly in the eyes. You gave me lies paid for with stolen money. You didn't give. You took. The finality in her voice seemed to break him. He buried his face in his hands. His broad shoulders shook. The Titan was nothing more than a common thief caught in the act. It's over, Damien, Eleanor said, pulling her phone from her pocket. My lawyers have filed for divorce on the grounds of financial fraud and adultery. They have also filed a court order to freeze all your personal assets, pending the federal investigation. The doorman has been instructed not to allow you back into the building after tonight. You'll be staying at your club. I suggest you call your lawyer. She looked at him one last time with a mixture of contempt and finality. Milo and the security team are waiting outside the door to escort you out. Don't cause a scene. You've caused enough embarrassment for one night. With that, she turned her back on him. A final, dismissive gesture. Damien Cross, the man who commanded boardrooms and built skyscrapers, sat broken in his wife's penthouse, completely, utterly defeated. The master of the universe had just learned he was never in control. The true key. 6 months later, the cold autumn had given way to the crisp winter of Manhattan. The city was a whirlwind of activity. But for the 3 people whose lives had irrevocably collided in that penthouse suite, the world had been remade. Damien Cross's fall was swift and brutal. The story broke in the Wall Street Journal, a carefully orchestrated leak by Eleanor's PR team. Industry titan indicted in massive fraud scheme. The sordid details of his affairs were largely kept out of the mainstream press, dwarfed by the magnitude of his financial crimes. Eleanor was right. His cheating was a footnote in the much larger story of his greed. He was out on bail, awaiting a trial. Everyone knew he would lose. His company was in ruins, being dismembered and sold off for parts. His name, once a symbol of power and success, was now synonymous with disgrace. He was a ghost, haunting the city he once owned, his photo occasionally popping up in the tabloids, looking haggard and defeated outside his lawyer's office. Eleanor Cross, however, had thrived. She had shed the Cross name like an old skin and reverted to her maiden name, Eleanor Beaumont. She had seized full control of the Beaumont Trust and her family's fortune. In an astonishing power move, she had used her own capital to acquire the best assets of Damien's collapsed company, rebranding them under a powerful new global entity, Beaumont Acquisitions. The society pages now portrayed her not as the scorned wife, but as a brilliant, ruthless businesswoman who had excised the cancer from her life and built an even stronger empire upon its ruins. She was more powerful, more respected, and more feared than Damien had ever been. She was, in every sense of the word, the master, and Serafina Vance was gone. As promised, Eleanor's lawyers had protected her. She gave a discreet deposition to the SEC, her testimony the final, irrefutable piece of the puzzle. Her name was never mentioned in the press. The money Damien had stolen from her was returned, along with a substantial sum Eleanor had termed a relocation and recovery bonus. Serafina took the money and left. She left Manhattan. She left the art world. She left the woman she had tried to become. She moved to a quiet coastal town in Maine, trading the glittering Manhattan skyline for the infinite horizon of the Atlantic Ocean. She bought a small house with a garden and enrolled in a landscape architecture program at a local university. She had cut her blonde hair and let it grow out to its natural light brown. She traded her silk dresses for jeans and comfortable sweaters. Some days she walked the beach and thought of the woman in the emerald dress who had walked so haughtily into that penthouse. She felt a strange mix of pity and contempt for her. That woman had been so desperate for a life that was never hers, so willing to believe a beautiful lie. Serafina was learning to build a life that was real, a life that was hers. It wasn't as glamorous as the one she had chased, but it was honest. It was hers. She had walked into that penthouse as a mistress, believing she was about to become a queen, only to discover she was a pawn. But in the end, in a strange twist of fate, it was the scorned wife who had given her the greatest gift of all. Not the key to a penthouse, but the key to her own freedom. 2 years later, the reunion. 2 years can build a new world. For the woman who now went by Eva Martin, shedding the Vance surname along with the life it represented, the world was one of sun-bleached wood, the scent of salt water and soil, and the quiet satisfaction of coaxing life from the earth. The landscape architecture program in Maine had been her crucible and her salvation. It was a profession rooted in reality, in seasons and patience, a universe away from the high-stakes, transient glamour of the Manhattan art scene. She was in Miami for a week-long seminar on subtropical urban design. It was a trip funded by her own hard work and a small grant, a fact that gave her a quiet, fierce pride. On her last afternoon, she found herself standing in front of the gleaming glass facade of the Miami Beach Convention Center, the setting for a local edition of Art Basel. For a long moment, she hesitated to go in. That world was a ghost, a past life that no longer belonged to her. But curiosity and a desire to test the strength of her own peace won out. She bought a ticket and stepped inside. The air was the same, that unique blend of recirculated, expensive cologne and the faint, dusty smell of canvas and money. It was a cacophony of languages, air kisses, and insincere compliments. 2 years ago, she would have navigated these aisles with the focus of a hunter, her eyes scanning for potential clients, powerful men, a foothold in a world that always felt just out of reach. Today, she felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign tribe. She saw the desperation behind the smiles, the transactional nature of every conversation. She saw the young women, beautiful and hungry, so like the one she had been, circling the older, powerful men. It didn't fill her with nostalgia. It filled her with a profound relief. She was wandering through an exhibit of German galleries, admiring the austere, brutalist beauty of a concrete sculpture, when a familiar voice cut through the ambient murmur. It wasn't loud, but it carried the same effortless authority she remembered from the Penthouse. Eva froze, her back to the sound. It was coming from a small, roped-off lounge area where a live interview for an art podcast was taking place. And with the new acquisition fund from the Beaumont Foundation, the voice was saying, we are not just investing in art, we are investing in the cultural bedrock of our communities. Slowly, Eva turned. There was Eleanor Beaumont, sitting in an elegant white armchair, the picture of grace and power. She was wearing a tailored white linen suit, her dark hair cut in a chic, shorter style. She looked younger, more vibrant than Eva remembered. The weight of Damien Cross's existence had been lifted, and in its place was an aura of absolute control. She was no longer just a Titan's wife. She was. Eva watched for 10 minutes, mesmerized. Eleanor spoke with intelligence and passion about her foundation's work, about fostering emerging artists, about the responsibility of wealth. She was charming, formidable, and utterly convincing. As the interview concluded in a burst of applause, a small retinue of assistants and museum curators immediately surrounded her. Eva felt an invisible wall between them, the same wall that had always been there, only now she could see it clearly. She turned to leave, feeling she had seen enough. She had faced the ghost and felt nothing. It was a victory. As she navigated the crowd toward the exit, a hand touched her elbow gently. I had a feeling that was you. Eva stopped. Her heart gave a single, strong thump. She turned to face Eleanor, who had somehow detached from her admiring orbit and was standing alone, her dark eyes assessing. Eleanor, Eva said, her voice steady. It was the first time she had said her name out loud. You look well, Eleanor observed, her gaze sweeping over Eva's simple cotton dress and sandals, her subtly highlighted brown hair, and her makeup-free face. There was no judgment in her tone, only a distant curiosity. Maine suits you. I saw your interview. You're doing incredible work, Eva countered, the words sounding formal and strange on her tongue. It's what I was always meant to do, Eleanor said simply. A flicker of something unreadable passed in her eyes. Damien was sentenced last month, 20 years. He'll probably be out in 12 for good behavior. The information was delivered like a weather report. Factual. Distant. I know, Eva said. I rated ED. Read about it. They stood in a small pocket of silence amid the swirling crowd. Two women bound by a past that felt like a fever dream. The power dynamic was still there, but it was different. It was no longer wife versus mistress. It was a queen and a survivor, acknowledging a shared, scorched battlefield. I always meant to tell you something, Eleanor said, her voice dropping slightly. That key you had, the one with the cross crest, it was a prop, a fake. Eva stared back, uncomprehending. A fake? But it opened the door. It did, because I had already unlocked the door from my system. Damien had it custom made by a jeweler. The actual guest keys were simple silver fobs. He created that heavy, ornate thing just for you. He loved the theater of it all, the grand gesture. He wanted you to feel like you were being handed the key to the kingdom. Eleanor's lips twisted into a wry, joyless smile. He never understood that the kingdom was never his to give away. Of all the betrayals, this one small, posthumous detail was somehow the most clarifying. The key, the symbol of her victory, the very object that had propelled her into that penthouse, was a lie. A piece of set dressing in a play where she was the only one who didn't know her lines. It wasn't just that the promises were fake. The very props were counterfeit. The knowledge brought no pain. It brought a profound and final sense of release. It severed the last lingering thread of a story she had once told herself. "Thank you for telling me," Eva said, and she meant it. Eleanor nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly. An assistant appeared at her side, whispering urgently. The world was calling her back. "Best of luck with your gardens, Eva," she said. And then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd, a queen returning to her court. Eva stood alone for a moment longer, the noise of the art fair fading to a dull hum. She thought of the fake key, the silk dress, the stolen money, the entire glittering, empty facade. Then she thought of the Maine sun on her face, the feel of rich soil under her fingernails, and the simple, honest beauty of a seed pushing its way toward the light. She had walked into that penthouse wanting a kingdom. She had walked out with something far more valuable, herself. Turning her back on the world of art and lies, Eva Martin stepped out into the bright, warm Miami sunlight. And for the first time, she felt complete and utterly free. Meaningful conclusion and call to action. And so the story ends, not with a bang, but with the quiet rebuilding of lives. It is a raw, uncompromising look at how the lines between love, ambition, and betrayal can blur in the pursuit of power. We saw one woman, Serafina/Eva, who thought she was winning the ultimate prize, only to discover she was a disposable part of a much bigger, more dangerous game. And we saw another woman, Eleanor, who was underestimated and dismissed, rise from the ashes of betrayal, not as a victim, but as the architect of her own powerful destiny. This story is a reminder that the truth is often far more complex than it appears. And sometimes, the greatest power comes not from opening a door, but from knowing which keys to keep. If this story of shattered illusions and unexpected alliances captivated you, please leave a comment below. What did you think of Eleanor's final move with the fake key? Was it justified? Could you empathize with Serafina Eva's journey of self-discovery? What is the most surprising thing you learned from this tale? Your engagement helps our channel grow and bring you more thrilling stories like this one. Don't forget to like, share this video with someone who loves a good drama, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Thank you for listening.